What is going on, nerds? Hello, nerds! It's been a very long time. I've been a little bit under the weather, but I am feeling much better now. And we've got a great show for you today. We're going to go into Andrew Yang's latest appearance on the Bill Maher show. And I'll react to it. I haven't watched it. I was going to actually do a POTUS 2024 rundown of the trending candidates. But then a bunch of you on social said, hey, can you do Bill Maher's thing? And I did a poll, and a bunch of you said, let's do that first. So that's what we're going to do. If I have time later this weekend, or I guess tonight, I'll try and do a POTUS 2024 wrap up. But you can always go to ofthepeople.us to see who's trending and approval vote whoever you like, and that'll affect the rankings. So make your voice heard. And good morning, C. Prouse. Okay, hello, nerds. All right, so shall we just get into it? Let's see if we can look at the Bill Maher real time with Bill Maher. There it is. And I'll react. In the meantime, go ahead and say in the chat where you're from, and I'll give you a shout out at the appropriate break. All right, hold on one second. There we go. It's nice to see Andrew back out there. I think a lot of us are so used to seeing him when he was running for president all the time, but obviously he's got to kind of be a little more sustainable now. So let's see what he has to say.
Okay, hey. All right, he is the co-chair of the new political party Forward and host of the Forward podcast, Andrew Yang.
Ooh, there he is. Andrew M.F. Yang.
She's the Democratic congresswoman from Michigan who recently announced her run for U.S. Senate in 2024. Representative Alyssa Slotkin is back with us. Okay. 2 office seekers I have here. All right, so the banks are failing again, which gets people 2 things: angry, right, about the money going away and us having to cover it if that's going to be the case, and scared. I'm a little scared. I've seen this movie before, and I hope it doesn't keep going. Maybe they put an end to it, but I don't know. So you want to be president, you want to be senator, and I assume president after that.
Well, it's interesting that he basically said to Andrew, you want to be president. I think Andrew's been kind of coy about that. But you didn't see, it would be interesting to see if Andrew's like, no, actually, I'm not running for president. But let's see.
So how do you punish the people who recklessly waste our money without taking down the whole system? That always seems to be the case. Or do we just have to put up with it, that it's always a gun to our head, that if we really punish them, no?
No, I mean, I think the Silicon Valley Bank is the perfect moment to take the head of that bank, who was selling off his stock and making millions of dollars in the days before the scandal happened, who it is perfect role that you can't just fail.
Oh, I'm going to skip past the other guests because we're going to focus on the Yang reaction. So if you were here to have me react to the candidate for senator, let me know in the comments if you want me to, but I'm going to go skip, mostly focus on Yang questions and answers.
Fail and take risks.
That's just, we're paying 100 cents on the dollar. We're talking about billions. Yes, you can take care of this guy. What does it cost you, $10, $15 million? I'm talking about making everybody whole. That's what takes this. Yeah, I mean, that's where the big money is. This is easy to get him in Hawaii.
Well, we need a new term, Bill, because everyone says bailout, bailout. Bailout means that the executives are still there. They're not. They're fired. The shareholders are made whole. They're not. They're zeroed out. The people that got their money were depositors, people who just had their money in the bank. They chose the 16th biggest bank in the country. So them getting their money back actually was necessary for confidence to continue in the financial system. Even with this backstop, there's a lot of fear. You're not the only one, Bill. There are people withdrawing their money from regional banks around the country and plowing them into what? JP Morgan, Bank of America, Citibank. Those mega banks are, we all know they're too big to fail, and all the lesser banks now have to try and keep the confidence of their depositors. So this backstop was the right move.
All right. So that's the first answer. Oh, Eric says, wait a minute. There are moments soon. Okay, Eric has watched this interview where you need to listen to her because she attacks the Yang. All right, okay. So we'll listen to the other guest as well. I keep saying the other guest. What is her name? Oh man, guys, help me out in the comments. What is the name of the other guest? But either way, in terms of Yang's first answer, Nerds for Humanity would agree that the notion that this is a bailout of the bank executives or big tech or bank investors, I don't think is really accurate at all for Silicon Valley Bank. I mean, the people that are being backstopped are the people who just tried to open a checking account and were starting a small business and, with hopes of becoming a next, big success. It's the American dream. C. Prouse says, okay, C. Prouse knows her name. Right. Yeah. Slotkin. Okay, there we go. Thank you, Eric Edwards. Yeah, so is depositor bailout. I mean, it's a depositor guarantee. In theory, if people don't make a run on the bank, then the bank can easily cover normal withdrawals. So far, I'm going to agree with Yang. I feel like he's making a very nuanced argument. This is a complex topic, but I agree with him. This is not a bailout in the way of, the shareholders of Silicon Valley Bank or the executives are all making their millions. They're going to get completely brought to zero. But the people who opened a checking account that were trying to start a company and had their money deposited at Silicon Valley Bank, their deposits are being guaranteed by the federal government. And I think that's probably a good thing. If they weren't, you can imagine what would everybody else do? Everybody would start taking money out of all their banks. Okay. So, thank you. Yes, C. Prouse, it is over. I think it is over 250 for the SVB and maybe the Republic banks too. 250 was, if you're a company trying to, you raised a few $1 million in capital to build some new technology and you put it in Silicon Valley Bank, and then Silicon Valley Bank does some dumb stuff, or everybody starts to make a run on Silicon Valley Bank and withdrawals on the same day. I think it was $40 billion withdrawals in a 24-hour period or something crazy like that. Then, you didn't do anything wrong. You just opened a checking account for your company so you can make payroll. So good to see you, BTS. Okay. Eric says she's a nice lady. Okay, well, we'll listen to more to Slotkin in a moment. Let's do it.
Yes, it's what adults do.
But it is different. This is different than what we went through in 2008, right? I think
hope.
it's not taxpayer dollars. I think we are not coming in to heal these banks with U.S. taxpayer dollars. There is a fund, $100 million fund, that is made out of bank fees and fines when they screw up.
Right.
And that is what's backstopping these depositors. That's fundamentally different.
Right.
So, unfortunately, we're in the early innings of a disaster movie when it comes to the...
So, Slotkin makes a good point that this is not the same as 08, certainly in scale, and that this is not using taxpayer money. It is using government resources and credibility to back up these things, but, she's making a nuanced argument as well. So kudos to both of them. They seem like thoughtful people so far.
Financial sector, because you had interest rates go from essentially 0% over 12, 14 years to 4.5% in just a series of months. So Silicon Valley Bank, people have to understand, they went bust by buying treasury bills. They did not buy something risky. They bought the least risky thing on the table,
right.
And it became risky because interest rates spiked. There's a 100% chance that a lot of other banks have done the exact same thing. They have not hedged the risk.
Okay, so on this point, I agree and kind of have a different view than Yang in that he's right. Silicon Valley Bank did put a lot of their money in long-term treasury bills, which is considered very safe, almost risk-free in Finance 101 terms. However, I think it's also true that the bank basically bought these long-term instruments that are very hard to get the dollar for dollar value out of if interest rates are going up, which they did, and you need to liquidate them fast. So then you're basically going to take losses on these lower risk instruments to cover all these withdrawal requests. So this is a example where SVB did make a poor management decision, where they basically put too much money in these long-term treasury bills that then lost value, and then they weren't prepared and able to handle a growth in withdrawal requests, and then had to do like additional capital raising. So yes, Yang's right. It's not like these SVB guys were kind of playing, putting money into like completely random things, but they did kind of mismanage the timing of their investments, and that's what they're supposed to do well. In theory, government regulators should have probably also noticed this. And then the last thing I did want to make a mention of is when Yang was running for president, and a lot of us were, for the first time getting to know UBI, there were people who raised concerns about inflation. And many of us, myself included, were like, oh, inflation, that's like such a quaint term. Like, we haven't seen that in so long. But obviously with the pandemic, the disruption to supply chains from China, the Russian war and embargo on Russian oil, and then all these kind of like strange extreme climate things, effects on agriculture. We clearly are seeing inflation now. So that's just a side point for all the UBI folks that, inflation is a real concern. Now, I'm not saying that UBI would have caused more inflation, especially if it were funded with a value-added tax. But it's also to say, like, you can't just print the money. You have to get the money from somewhere to then provide it as a basic income, in my opinion.
Landmines all over the
But-
balance sheets of the financial sector.
And interest rates spiked, right, because of inflation.
Yes.
That's why they had to. Okay, so when Uncle Sugar was very generous during COVID, right, that was the result of that. That's what caused the inflation, a lot of what caused the inflation. You cannot put $6 trillion that you don't have in people's pockets and not expect some inflation. That's what caused this rate, and that's so it's all connected.
It's all connected, and the last time we were in this kind of bind was the 70s, which I vaguely remember. You might remember a little bit of it, Bill. So they had no choice but to jack up interest rates because they were trying to tamp down inflation. We're in that movie again, except the financial sector is a much bigger part of the economy now than it was in the 70s.
So speaking of the economy, I mean, your big thing when you ran was UBI.
Oh, I did not watch this interview, but I do think it sounds like Maher is going to say, hey, look, you were the UBI guy, and we pumped $6 trillion in stimulus during the lockdown. That caused a lot of inflation. Wouldn't your proposals have done the same thing? I'm hoping Yang, I'm almost sure Yang is going to say, well, look, I was not advocating for just printing the money. I was advocating for capturing money through value-added tax and then using that to fund the basic income. So you weren't necessarily introducing more money into the system. You were reallocating it from a value-added tax. But let's see what Yang says.
Yep.
Which is not a bowel problem. It sounds like it. I always think,
I know, we had a
it's-
branding thing.
It's universal basic income, right? Which is sort of what we did
Yeah.
during COVID, okay? So where are you now? I mean, I see I don't get your third party because I read your website, and it's a bunch of mush. I'm not trying.
Oh, damn. I mean, this is a legitimate criticism of the Forward Party in that the Forward Party is trying to do a very difficult thing. They're trying to build a grassroots, bottoms-up thing. They don't want it to be the party of Yang, so they don't want it to be a carbon copy of Yang 2020. But they also haven't had a formal convention where they've ratified a formal platform. And so what you see on the Forward Party site today is mainly around election reform, which is super important, but it's also not what the mainstream American voter and most of the media are interested in talking about, even left-wing or right-wing media. Like what? Have you ever seen Tucker Carlson talk about open primaries or ranked choice voting? I don't know, maybe he has, but or Don Lemon, or Rachel Maddow, nobody wants to talk about democratic reform, but that is what the Forward Party has on their website today, and they're not taking positions on things like basic income or healthcare reform or climate. And I think some people are becoming anxious to see well, what is the Forward Party for? But let's see what one of the leaders of the party has to say about that.
I don't want to be mean. I'm just saying it's not specific. It doesn't even mention this. And why start a third party, which is a long shot anyway, if you're not going to be bold and what?
Oh, I'd love to dig into this.
Please do.
Yeah. So what I determined was that our current political system is not going to address poverty or climate change or polarization unless you actually fix the incentives. And it was a U.S. senator who said this to me, and everyone needs to understand this. She said, we're at a point in American life where an issue is worth more to us unaddressed than addressed. Because if I lean forward to solve the problem, what happens? I get beat up by my base, my job security goes down, I get attacked.
Right.
So we're in a no compromise zone. So if you wanted to, let's say, alleviate poverty in America, you have to fix our democratic system. This two-party system is not designed to deliver solutions.
I just have to.
Okay, but again, that's.
I just have to say, so I'm not 100% sure how a different party, I mean, you have to explain how that's going to change the whole system. But here's the thing. If you have a senator, as someone who's running for Senate, if you have a senator who's saying, the incentives are wrong, so I can't do the right thing, that's the problem.
Okay, so here you have Slotkin pushing back, saying hey, I'm running as a Democrat. She's probably not a fan. Oh, Elizabeth, thank you for sharing. I appreciate it. You can always, well, I already follow you, Elizabeth, and I already retweet whenever you tag me, but you could do it again. Feel free to. Also, thank you for your support of the people. So I think what Alyssa is saying is hey, people should do the right thing irrespective of the incentives, and probably the undercurrent is your third party may take away votes that the Democrats need to win. But let's let her keep going.
Problem, not the fact that we need another party. It's that you have people who won't take risks. You have people who are going to put their reelection over anything else, who are worried from a primary from their left or for right,
Yep.
100%. But if you put people who are brave in those places, if you put people who are saying look, if I don't win my next election, no one dies. I can go on, I'll find another job, then you actually see the incentives change because then they want to do the right thing. That is part of why our government doesn't work. It sometimes is people.
So look, Alyssa, first.
All right, so she's kind of saying, hey, don't mess with the system. People should just do the right thing. And I think Yang's probably going to say, hey, this system only rewards, division. And you're a good person, but why can't we also have good people and a good system? I don't know. Let's see. That's what I would say. Well, let's see what Yang says.
I love what you're saying, but there was a guy in Michigan who bravely voted to impeach Donald Trump at great personal risk, Peter Maher, and he lost his seat in part because Democrats boosted his extremist challenger because that challenger was going to be easier to beat in the general. We have an incentive system right now. If you step up like Peter did or Adam Kinzinger or Liz Cheney, you're out of there. And so there are people that see this and say, okay, I get it. But the way out is to do what they did in Alaska, which is why Lisa Murkowski is the only Republican senator who voted to impeach Donald Trump, who made it back and was up for re-election in 22. You know why? Because they got rid of the party primaries in Alaska. That's why Sarah Palin lost to Mary Peltola. That's why Lisa Murkowski beat Kelly Tshibaka, the Trump-endorsed loony.
Now, this is a great talking point. I will say there are people who believe that ranked choice voting wasn't the reason that Sarah Palin lost, that in fact, I think it was more that, you know, there was, maybe it was another Republican. I'm not sure. I'll have to go back. I actually did a show on this a few months ago. But I do love the talking point that, hey, the current system basically says if you step outside of your lane for your partisan kind of dogma, you get killed and kicked out. And look at Alaska, where you have someone who stepped outside of her lane, challenged Trump, and still lived to tell the tale.
Who would have beaten her in a Republican primary. You get rid of the primaries, you fix the incentives, and that's what the Forward Party is designed to do.
I would just say that I think it's one thing to have that conversation at a state level, and I'm not against having that kind of primary, right? There's not a different party there. There's not a third party that they're part of. It's a different primary system. But when you're talking about a third party, like I like math, right? And I want to make sure that if we have a third party, that if we have a third party, that it's not going to be handing the country over to people who are extreme.
Oh boy. So she's saying, hey, look, let's have open primaries, but open primaries between the two parties. Because if you have a third party and it sucks away voters from Democrats, like you're going to basically help the kind of MAGA folks win. And I would imagine this is the part where maybe Yang will talk about ranked choice or maybe top two primary system like we do in California. But let's see what he says.
Who have fascist leanings. Like, I want to make sure that we do. I'm not the last person to say that the Democratic Party is perfect, trust me. But I'm just concerned that a third party means we're handing the country over to people who do not have good intentions for democracy.
And what about the issue, though? I mean, if you're going to start the third party, don't you at least have to have one major issue? And I thought you had one. This UBI thing, universal basic income. Everybody gets free money. Whether you believe it or not, it's an idea. When you look at the poverty levels, I mean, some big story came out last week, how the poverty levels haven't changed that much in 50 years from what there was something like 12.5 in 1970, now it's 10.8, or I don't know what, but it's very close. After we threw like $16 trillion at the problem, and it's only going to get worse with chat.
All right, so it's unfortunate that Bill has brought the policy thing up, not because he's asking a legitimate question, but we're now mixing two topics. One is Alyssa's point about, hey, third party will take away votes from the Democrats and support the kind of fascists or, extreme other wings of the American political spectrum. And then I think it would have been good for, hopefully Andrew will answer that, and then get to the policy thing. Because if we get sucked into the UBI debate and the spoiler kind of objection, it'll be a hard conversation. But, if anyone can do it, it's Andrew Yang.
Yeah, I saw this.
Totally.
Listen to this. Here are 3 jobs, they say, that were replaced by the new AI. Financial analyst.
Oh, shoot. Are we not going to be able to talk about ranked choice and open primaries and top two and instant runoffs? Because that would have addressed Alyssa's spoiler thing. But it looks like we're going back to the robot stuff, which is also an interesting topic, but we're kind of jumping around.
Advisors and bankers. We figured out the banking problem. This is how we kill them off.
AI is getting smarter while we're getting dumber. It's true. We can all see it. A friend of mine, Tristan Harris, puts it this way. we have primordial brains, medieval institutions, and godlike technology.
Right.
It's a very bad combination. So if you look at what we can do to alleviate poverty, the biggest thing we
Oh, so we're not going to address the spoiler thing. That's too bad. That is too bad, because now everybody who watches this is going to assume like, oh yeah, third party will spoil it. And I think the key, that's actually part of the reason why the forward party is so big on democracy reform, is to show that they won't be a spoiler. And that is the policy that they want to start with. But it looks like we're going to go back to AI automation, which is also, again, an important topic, but I feel like we missed a opportunity to kind of show the other perspective on the whole spoiler thing.
did recently, Bill, was the Enhanced Child Tax Credit 2021. Helped lift millions of American kids out of poverty. And what happened? It elapsed. And that was in part because the two parties could not come together and deliver it. The incentive structure to get rid of poverty is what I'm hell-bent on trying to fix. And 62% of Americans know that this system needs a different dynamic, because right now the two sides are just going to go like this while we wonder what happened to the country.
But how can it be that we've spent so much? This report says when Reagan.
Now, I have a feeling that Yang, and Andrew, if you watch this, let us know. I have a feeling that Yang made a call here, which was, man, I could get into the nitty gritty of instant runoffs and top two or open primaries and how the math would not lead to spoilers. But I'm also thinking he's like, hey, I'm on the Bill Maher show. This is like part comedy, part news. And if I have to explain the nitty gritty, I'm going to lose the audience. So maybe he made the strategic choice to focus on the fact that the two parties aren't going to solve the problem and live to fight another day.
Again, Mr. President, we spent $1,015, I guess these are adjusted for inflation, for the 13 biggest anti-poverty programs in the country. Now, the first year in Trump, we spent $3,419 a person. We spend an incredible amount of money, and yet we're still somehow one of the least contributing countries to poverty programs of all the modern democracies in the world. How can we be spending so much money, coming in last, and not solving the problem?
Yeah.
That is some real American ingenuity.
Yeah, I think, look, I think that it's also about what we're spending it on, right? And I think to me, I mean, the most expensive thing we have in our country related to poverty is generational poverty, where you have family member after family member who's born into poverty, who lives in poverty, who has kids that are then in poverty.
But is poverty even the same thing as it was when I was a kid? I feel like when I was poor, wow, I didn't have shit. I mean, I didn't have really two nickels to rub against each other. And now everybody seems to have a cell phone. Nobody starves in America. The problem is the opposite.
I don't. First of all, I do not think it's fair to say that everyone in America, all of our children, are getting enough to eat.
No,
And
that's probably
I
true.
don't think that's right. I don't think that's right.
But there are places they can always go to get food.
Yeah, but this is the argument that people
And they
make.
don't starve.
So they have a cell phone. How are you going to get a job today if you don't have a cell phone?
I'm just asking the question. I mean, it just seems standards do change. I'm just asking if they have.
It's different to be poor in 2023 than it was in the 70s or 80s, but a lot of the elements of a good middle class life are just getting more and more expensive. Housing, education, healthcare. Meanwhile,
Oh, this is good. This is good because he's now making a middle class argument for UBI. Kind of very well done, Andrew. Because I think Bill's making a interesting point, which is like, hey, this is not like the 19th century where people were literally like starving in the streets. I think Andrew's saying, hey, middle class, everybody's affected, and you could argue like opioid crisis, homelessness, those are still huge things, but I think he's making the argument that there's a broader need here.
Americans are getting paid. It stayed the same. Maybe it's inched up a little bit, but inflation's been eating that up. Our economy has become this winner-take-all, inhuman mess. And it's why, unfortunately, I think we're grappling with some of the extremism that we are, because people are looking for answers.
And is the answer the universal basic income? To just give people a block of money.
I love it. I mean, what's interesting about this is like, Yang's branding from 2020 as the UBI guy is hard to shake off. I think Bill brings it up not to support Yang, but to kind of like make him a caricature. And now Yang's in a hard spot because UBI is not yet an official position of the Forward Party. So he can't really beat the drum too hard. But I think if he kind of pulls back too far away from UBI, then, it's sort of missing an opportunity to advocate for something that he personally believes in. So it'll be interesting to see how he handles this.
I 100% am for enhanced cash relief. It's like the child tax credit. It lifted millions of people out of poverty. I'm going to confess to you all. I ran for president on universal basic income. My goal was to try and drag the conversation in a particular direction. I said to my wife, hey, baby, if I run for president, I think I can accelerate the end of extreme poverty in America by a number of decades. That was always the goal.
I know, but you drag. I feel like you dragged the conversation there, and now you're avoiding it.
Oh, I dragged the conversation there.
Oh, I wonder if Bill knows that Yang's in a tough spot, that he really can't be the UBI guy as the Forward Party guy. And I think Yang's going to say, hey, look, I was basically in favor of better cash relief in general, which is kind of true, but he was clearly pro-UBI, and I think he still is. It's a hard needle to thread.
Bill, but now I figured out that this system does not care what happens to us, our families, our communities, doesn't care. Poverty gets deeper and more entrenched. So how do we get it to care again? And the way we get it to care again is to actually reestablish the connection between us and our elected representatives.
Okay, that's the pivot. So the pivot is, hey, I saw robots taking over and working class people getting screwed. I felt that more cash relief would reduce poverty and would be good. But then I realized that there's an even bigger problem, which is that the system is fundamentally broken from doing any policy. And so I got to go at the foundational layer, which I think everybody watching this, if you're a subscriber to Nerds for Humanity, you get that kind of arc. By the way, if you're not a subscriber, hit the subscribe button. It helps keep this channel alive. But that's the pivot he's making. Hey, I was for UBI, still am. We got a bigger issue, which is the system's fundamentally broken. That's what the Forward Party is all about.
Great.
All right, we're all for that. All right, so listen, I hate to make this if anybody who works for Forbes magazine.
All right, so Mike, also a channel member, is saying, why could Yang not speak at his own behalf? I think he can. I think if he talks all the time about UBI, it will be conflated with that being a Forward Party position, which I think in order to do the party mergers with the other parties, to kind of roll up these third-party movements, they probably had to agree not to push the basic income stuff too hard. Otherwise, they wouldn't have gotten those other third parties to join forces. They'll leave it for the convention to do. But I think, in theory, Yang can speak as an individual and have it separate from the Forward Party, but he's so associated with it. It'd be like Trump speaking and, not inferring that that's the current Republican Party position.
Is watching the show. You might want to turn it off now. I always picture these poor people who are big fans, and then I do something that has to make them look bad. But Forbes magazine, I have to say, we looked, and this is apropos of this week with all the financial news, because they've been sort of the Bible, of the magazines I've ever known about financial matters. And 5 days before the Silicon Valley Bank crashed, they had America's best banks list. They made America's best bank 5 days before, and this is not the only time. I don't remember if you remember WeWorks, which was valued at $40 billion.
All right, so now this is a commentary on kind of the crappy media coverage, which I think is probably fair. We're going to go on to get more of the Yang commentary. Before we do that, I do want to take a moment to thank the people who make this Nerds for Humanity channel possible. And that is our members. So let me just go and share my screen, and then we'll go back to the Yang reaction. So if you're not a member, you're watching on YouTube, just click the join button. Starts at $1.99. It basically goes to mostly our podcasting hosting fees. So if you're watching this on video and you like audio podcasts, these episodes are almost always on audio podcast directories as well. But that costs money to kind of host it. And then thumbnail, image editors, and some other software costs to run the channel. So biggest supporter overall is Soldier One. He's a senior vice president. Thank you, Soldier One. Then at the VP level, we have Kristen Slevin and Bike. Thank you, Kristen and Bike. Then next down are hardcore. In order of time as member, Gene, David, DK, Jekalego, who I think is in the live stream now, Kirsch, Mr. History, Mona, Vaughn, Yang, Robert, Dean, Galessa, J. Perrin, AH, Dana, Jason, Daniel, and Mickey. I think Mickey might be in here as well. And thank you to StreamYard for helping with our streaming costs. And then at the verified level, Lisa, Albert, Brandon, Sophia, Doris, Emerald, Ben, James, Ira, Elizabeth, Shoni, Dr. A, Jameson, William, Karen, Zemery, Mai, Brittany, Lori, Warren, Juana, Lucky, Kevin, Nell, T, Jeremy, David, Nicholas, Mike. I think Mike's in the house. Aurora, Zig, N, Carter, Roberto, and Caleb. Okay, so let's get back to the React part of the interview. There we are. And we're going to skip probably.
Something and crash. Sam Bankman is seeing the future. Guys, question about if I don't.
I was on. Yes.
Andrew, can I ask you a question about Asians?
Ha!
I'm asking you because, if I don't, then it's like, why didn't you? And if I do, then why did you? You can't win.
I gotta say, man, when I was on the presidential debate stage, I was always a freaking question about China.
Well, China, we all have to. I mean, that's one of the biggest issues in the world. But
yeah, it got repetitive. But
I'm
continue.
sure.
Continue.
Well, only because I see in the polls that the Asian community as a voting bloc is moving right. This should concern you very much. Since the 2018 midterms, Democratic voter support down 7 points with black voters, 10 with Latinos, and 19 with Asian Americans. So, your concerns and why?
Well, I can't speak for the exact numbers, but certainly there's chunks of people that the Democratic Party has taken for granted for a long time. And I think, it sort of was this commonly understood thing.
This Slotkin seems very reasonable. She seems very thoughtful. I like her. I'm not super excited about her, but she's like, yeah, the party has made mistakes and lost some support, and let's see what she thinks we should do about it.
Thing that the Democratic Party appealed more to minority communities of the United States. And it turns out if you don't work hard to actually reach out to them, to engage them, to speak in Spanish, to appeal to the concerns that they have, they're not an automatic voting bloc, either voting for you or coming out to vote at all. And I think the Democratic Party...
But don't you at least try? I mean, compared to the other... I would think the other side is saying, are you kidding? Ignore them. They cater to them.
Well, I think at least I can say in Michigan, the other side is definitely seeing an opportunity. Certainly, the Republican Party and the African American men, I think, there is a relationship there that the Republicans are trying to build, but I think it's beholden to the Democratic Party to actually work for the voters we expect to come out and vote for us.
It was a good answer. I think it would have been better if Slotkin had talked about, well, why? It's not just that the Democratic Party isn't speaking in Spanish. I think they're missing the broader point, which is the Democratic Party has been speaking a lot from a very progressive kind of social activist point of view. And maybe they made the assumption that, oh, well, then the minorities will be in favor of this. But I think they might have oversimplified what, Democratic minority voters care about. And I'm sure it's many of those social activism things, but probably other things like public safety and poverty or helping the middle class, just being more kind of efficient with government programs. But let's see how she continues.
Okay.
If you look at Asian American voters in the Bay Area, they were a big part of the recall of a DA that didn't seem to be concerned with prosecuting certain crimes, and school board members who are more concerned about renaming schools than reopening them. And so if you talk to a lot of Asian Americans, they're very much concerned about crime and public safety. They're getting beaten up, targeted in their communities. And for better or for worse, in this two-sided system, they think, well, the Democrats aren't solving this problem, so I'm going to head the other way.
Isn't it also the schools that they've changed admissions programs? And I know when de Blasio was mayor of New York, he tried to do this. The advanced placement programs to make it so that there are more Black and Latino students.
Ooh, so this is now we're getting into a very, very delicate area. Two things. One, Yang's bringing up public safety, and let's just be direct. There were cases of Asian American citizens just getting beat up on the sidewalk by random people, sometimes people of color who were, doing the attacking. And you've got, what is the Democratic Party supposed to do? Because they technically, historically, have been very strong advocates of, people's rights. And but what do you do when different constituencies within your party are having this kind of conflict? And then now we're going to get into affirmative action, which you could argue does not benefit many Asian Americans, but certainly benefits African Americans or other underrepresented groups that may not have had as many opportunities historically. So how does Yang try and navigate that minefield? Let's see.
In these programs, and it came at the price of Asians, who the same thing. This is why Harvard is being sued now.
I think it's one of the big issues. It would be public safety, education, and the fact that many Asian Americans, in my experience, are very pragmatic and want something to work better. They're not very ideological. And what they're doing is they're seeing in both parties that there's this ideological war that they don't identify with.
But this is where merit hits against equity, is it not? Are we going to admit the people who earned it and did the best, or are we going to try to make it so that everybody is equally represented?
I'm just not sure it's that simple. I think you.
Well, that's what this.
Ooh, let's see what Slotkin says about this. She's kind of like, hey, but looks like she's going to wade into it. And Yang's thinking, my God, I'm glad I don't have to answer this one anymore.
Supreme Court case really is.
Well, that's what the Supreme Court case is. But to me, I think you have to understand that being educated in college is not just about your grades and your classes and making sure everyone has the right SAT scores. It is about educating yourself about the world and educating yourself about the multiracial, multi-ethnic country we want to be. And to me, that means there's a whole bunch of reasons why college would look at a whole bunch of factors when they're letting people in, and I have no problem with that.
But it seems like what you described is what they do more than anything else in college. I mean, did you?
Oh, I think this racialized zero-sum game is exactly the kind of thing we have to avoid. As an Asian American who did not get into Harvard, and if you look at an institution like Harvard, they have an endowment of $50 billion. They should be opening a satellite campus in Detroit, Michigan. They should be doubling their class size. Like, if they wanted to be a serious engine of social mobility, they could do much bigger things. Right now, this is unfortunately this window dressing that doesn't actually solve the nation's problems.
All right, so that was a really profound argument from Yang, which is, look, we can argue over who's going to get this small number of spots at these elite colleges. And if you make it more representative, you may not be, you may not be able to accept people who are well represented, who have great test scores and grades and activities and everything like that, and essays and interviews and letters of rec. And what he's saying is like, well, why not just add more seats to the table? And why doesn't Harvard or Yale or Princeton or MIT, why don't they increase their capacity? That's a delicate one. You could actually require them to, in order for their students to be eligible for federal aid. But that does get into like some tricky areas where at some point does Harvard cease to become Harvard if it had 1,000 times the students that it does today? And obviously Yang's not advocating for 1,000 times more. That's an extreme kind of argument. But if it 5x'd, would it still be able to provide the kind of education that it does today? And how do you weigh those trade-offs?
Well, that's a good avoidance of the basic questions. Let me go to the Stanford story then, because that is very relevant to what we're talking about. If you haven't seen what's going on, it's a very big story this week, Stanford Law School. And I think this is very worrying for anybody who cares about free speech or about our future justice system and who are becoming the lawyers. Okay, so Stanford, like every elite college, is very, very, very liberal, but they do have something called the Federalist Society. This is a conservative society. They don't like them, but they allow them on campus, and they invited a federal judge who Trump appointed. Now, this guy, he's a very conservative guy. I mean, half the country's conservative, okay? I don't agree with his rulings, but he's invited to speak on campus. Of course, we've seen this happen many, many times before. He's shouted down, screamed at. The difference here is he's being yelled at by the students. We hate you. You don't belong here. These are law students, by the way. So he says, could somebody help me out? And the head of the DEI, right, is at this school, Tyrion Steinbach. She got up there, and we just showed a little video to explain it better than I can.
I look out and I don't ask what is going on here. I look out and I say, I'm glad this is going on here. Is the juice worth the squeeze?
What does that mean?
I mean, is it worth the pain that this causes and the division that is causing?
Okay, so we didn't see the part where they were screaming at him, but that is what she's reacting to. And is it worth the pain? Is free speech worth the pain? And is it really painful? Is it really painful? If you don't like this guy, don't go to his lecture. I don't.
So on this one, I kind of agree with Bill's premise that if there's anywhere that different points of view should be explored, criticized, unpacked, dissected, it should be on a university campus. And if the speaker, I don't know anything about him, but if the speaker is a federal judge, even if you don't agree with them, would be interesting, and then you can challenge them in the Q&A. So yeah, I'll be curious to see what Yang and Slotkin say to this.
I don't get why everything is about pain and harm and.
Yeah, so I represent a couple of universities now, including Michigan State University. It should be a place of free speech. It should be a place where all people, conservative, liberal, are allowed to come and speak.
Okay. Yes, Slotkin. I agree.
I also have to say, as someone who is heckled all the time in public speeches, including this week when we were talking about gun safety on the steps of the Michigan Capitol, and we had a Second Amendment group, with bullhorns while you're trying to speak. I mean, the speaker's being a little bit of a fragile flower here. Like, push through, man. Like, just keep going.
She was about to say, put on your big boy pants, but obviously that would be too gender focused. So she said, push through, man. She probably should have just said, push through.
I mean, from what I saw, it was kind of impossible.
Okay, but and the students, no one should ever be threatening violence.
Oh, it looks like BTS is saying, making a comment about the different schools. Yeah, I think all colleges are great. I will say Stanford does have a very beautiful campus and it has very nice weather. I think Michigan in the summer is beautiful as well.
Violence, that's never allowed. That's not part of your First Amendment rights. But I don't have a problem if someone comes and speaks, and I don't have a problem if people in a civil and decent way protest
And
that
you don't have a
speech.
problem if the officer of the university gets up there and defends the hecklers and not the speaker, because that's what she did. She defended the hecklers, not the speaker.
I don't know the.
Yeah, you know, heckling, like if you're shouting while someone's giving a talk, I don't know. I think you should be able to shout and protest like before their presentation. You should be able to ask questions in a very thoughtful and constructive way in the Q&A period, and you should be able to protest after. But if the school or the faculty invites someone to give a lecture or give a talk, even if you disagree with them, like just shouting while they're talking would seem to just not be conducive of like, what are you trying? You're literally trying to suppress a judge from talking about, I guess, something related to law. That just doesn't seem to me to be. I mean, obviously, maybe if you had to defend them, they would say, well, look, we were trying to get attention to show how crazy this person is. And I suppose we're talking about it now, so that would prove it. But if you're a university student, you're there to learn, then if you're shouting over the speaker, then you won't be able to hear another perspective. As an example, like I actually watched a talk by Steve Bannon at the Oxford University Union. I think he gave it a few years ago. But I watched it last night. I was like, you know, I don't agree with this guy, but it's important for me to understand what the kind of MAGA thought leadership is thinking and how they're wired. And, you know, like, I thought it was useful. And I'm glad they didn't shout over him while he was talking.
Circumstances
Yeah,
here.
you just saw it. That's
but I mean,
exactly what you saw.
If the university invited this person or allowed this person to come and speak, then they're hosting
And
them.
by the way, they have apologized, the university.
Well, there is a distinction between being someone running for office and an invited speaker. And if you just reverse the situation, if you had a liberal speaker going to a conservative university getting heckled, you would hope the administrators would stand up and say, look, there's an invited guest, we should hear them out. But that should be the standard.
I mean,
I felt Yang was pretty reasonable here. It's interesting that people in the chat are saying that they were really disappointed in Yang's showing. I mean, I think it's been pretty okay so far. Maybe he gets worse.
the University of Michigan
Okay.
has, I
think the only thing I would criticize him in is maybe not tackling the spoiler effect thing, and then he's got this terrible like tension between his conviction around UBI and what he can do as a leader of the Forward Party, given the need for the party to develop its own platform.
think 142 DEI, that's diversity, equity, and inclusion, staff members. That's a lot, is it not?
I don't know what 142 means, but I have no problem with organizations having a person who is there to look at diversity.
I don't
equity,
either.
and inclusion.
But has it become a cottage industry? I mean, is it something where these are jobs now? Are these people ever going to want to give up their jobs?
I don't have any.
I don't know where he comes up with these numbers. I would not be surprised if there were people in organizations who they have like their primary job, but then they're also asked to participate in DEI stuff. It would be surprising if an organization had 142 full-time people who only did DEI stuff, but maybe Slotka knows more.
They're going to go, you know.
No, I don't have any problem with an institution looking at themselves and hiring people to do that. I have friends who do it for Fortune 100 companies. It's a good thing to do that. I don't know about 142 jobs, but I don't have a problem with institutions reflecting and trying to do better in their own way. That I don't have a problem with that.
So when I was running for president, I was trying to figure out why college has gotten 2.5 times more expensive, and it has not gotten 2.5 times better. Newsflash. And it's because they've hired 2.5 times more administrators. So there's bloat in a lot of different directions.
What about the reparations ruling in San Francisco? Is that too far?
Oh my God. I love the fact that Bill Maher is willing to just throw like all the hot potatoes out there. Good on him. I don't normally watch his show. I find his style a little bit too snarky, but this interview I think is interesting. It'll be fun to hear what Yang and Slotkin say about reparations.
The $5 million?
I don't know much about, I'm not,
Well, San Francisco, they are going forward with this plan to give reparations $5 million. I said it in the monologue, $5 million, which that's quite a lot.
to individuals.
Yes, to individuals. It said say what it would cost.
Even I didn't go this far.
$5 million total.
$5 million and a house for $1. They buy you a house. I mean, it seems like, you know, when people ask why you're talking against the woke craziness, because it's crazy. Is it not crazy? They said it would cost they said it would cost, and by the way, San Francisco doesn't have a history of slavery or anything like that, you know. It would cost every citizen left $600,000 each. This is madness, is it not?
So this is a proposal that's unfunded?
So this is I suspect that might be the headline of the proposal. I doubt they're proposing to tax everybody $600,000 to pay for these benefits. If I were any of the guests, I would say, like, look, I don't know the details of this. You know, people kick around ideas all the time, you know, but in general, am I in favor of addressing some inequities? Yes. Is that the right way to do it? I don't have the details. It definitely sounds very expensive to me.
I mean, it sounds like more of a political statement if it's going to cost.
But even if it is, what is this?
This is really the point, Bill, is that we have a lot of people at various stages of public office who are putting out bills and policies that are more for the messaging and stoking the fires on social media than actually trying to get something passed. That's what we need to undo.
Oh, well done, Yang. Well freaking done. You know, he's basically saying MTG, Boebert, maybe AOC and the squad, and sounds like some folks in San Francisco are putting out these kind of bold, audacious, kind of like way outside of the mainstream ideas to primarily stoke the flames versus trying to get anything done.
I feel like Biden this week is sort of pivoting to the center. I mean, he said when he was campaigning that he would not drill ever, never in Alaska, and now he said he's going to drill in Alaska.
All right, it's time to get a little controversial. I think that
good.
there should be
I was hoping it would come before the end of the show.
This is great. You could probably imagine the watch engagement going up at this point.
Yeah. I think that there should be a competitive primary in the Democratic Party. I think that Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan should run. I think that Gavin Newsom here in California should run. I think J.B. Pritzker, Illinois, should run. Joe Biden said in 2020, I am here to be a bridge to the next generation. That is what he should be at this moment. And if he were to go down this road, he would be now this George Washington level statesman. He gets rid of Trump, he gets some great things done, and then he says it's time to give it to the next generation. And then we would all be loving on Joe.
Oh, okay. So Eric's saying this is the bad part. Okay. So far, I feel like it doesn't feel bad to me, Eric. It sounds like Yang is saying, hey, Biden did a good job in his first term. He was transitional, and it's time for a competitive primary and get the next generation. I don't have any disagreements with Yang so far, but let's keep going.
Joe, please head this direction. If he does not, then we are punting on this entire succession challenge, and it could emerge at a very inopportune time. In my opinion, there are very, very real risks going down the road that it seems like we're going down.
But you're not even rooting for that party anymore, right? You're the Forward Party. You're not the Democratic Party anymore.
I'm pro-civilization, Bill. I'm pro-civilization, and I'm anti-extremism. And people who think that the Forward Party is somehow going to enable extremists have not dug into anything we've actually done. We've endorsed good people, like, frankly, Alyssa, against folks who want to do the democracy harm.
Pro-civilization.
Yeah.
So you're for good things and
Yep.
against bad.
Yep.
I knew I could find the specifics in your plan if I tried it hard enough. All right, thank you, two. Very enlightening, but it's time for new rules.
All right, so maybe the pro-civilization thing was a little too sort of humorous and maybe not enough specifics, because it kind of it basically walks into Maher's criticism that, well, you know, Forward Party isn't for anything. I mean, how, in hindsight, like, if you're Yang, how would you have responded? So basically, Maher's saying, hey, you want a competitive primary, but you're not a Democrat anymore. I think Yang could have said, in the long run, we think there should be open primaries where Democrats, Republicans, Green Party, Libertarians can all compete in the same primary, and we shouldn't let these party kind of bosses pick who they get to run. And then in the general election, we have to choose from what these very small parties have decided. Why not just open it up and let the people decide who the top candidates are? And if you're worried about spoiler effect, there are ways to address that and have ranked choice voting where, you know, these kind of long shot candidates, their votes are redistributed to their supporters' second choices. So, yeah, you know, like, you could, I mean, it's easy for us to say, like, hey, yeah, you could have done this. I mean, the guys on, you know, they're taping. It's a big stage. Bro had to address a lot of things. I mean, it was a 45-minute conversation. But yeah, pro-civilization, I don't know. I mean, I think it's tough because if he gave a very detailed answer, they're probably trying to wrap up the show, and they're probably giving him hand signals like, you got 2 seconds, you know, wrap it up. Let's see how the show ends.
Everybody, new rules.
Okay, so then it goes to another segment. So all in all, I thought Yang, I mean, I would give him like at least a B+. I didn't think it was terrible. And I think parts of it he should have gotten an A-. Maybe it was just the ending. Oh, God. I'll tell you what. We have 46 people in the live stream right now. If we get to 50, I'll keep going and do the overtime reaction. But we have been streaming for an hour. So I don't want to wear out my welcome. But while we're waiting to get to 50, and the way we're going to get to 50 is if you like and share. So just tell people to join and we'll do the overtime reaction. In the meantime, I do want to give a shout out to some of our top of the people candidates and who are trending now in our, speaking of open primary. So of the people.us, nonprofit, I'm one of the co-founders. It basically allows you to have an open primary. So you see here we have Forward Party, Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, and you can approval vote whoever you want. You just click on their profile, click the big green approve button. If you're like, oh, wait a minute, Katie Porter, or, you know, who's Vivek Ramaswamy, you can see a little video about them, read a little background about them. You can ask them questions, and then we'll reach out to the candidate to see if they can answer. You can see their recent tweets. So of the people, man, it's basically what the Forward Party is asking for, but just kind of a prototype of a online open primary. And the Forward Party is not looking for an online primary, but they're looking for open primary. And so check it out and cast your own votes. Right now, the trending candidates overall are Yang, Porter, Williamson, Ramaswamy, and Haley. And what's most interesting is you can filter. By the way, check out the new design. We've spent a lot of time redesigning the filtering experience. So if you look at the Republican, just the Republican candidates, the trending candidates as of right now, based on recent approval votes on Of the People, and there's now like almost 1,000 voters registered on Of the People. So, and you can just, It's free. You can vote. Anyone who hasn't, just log in and vote. The top Republican candidates are Ramaswamy, Haley, Pence, and then Christie, then Trump. So not DeSantis, at least in terms of recent. Now, if you sort by all time, the top ones are Haley, Youngkin, Christie, Ramaswamy, then DeSantis, Pence, and then Trump. In both trending and all time, Trump is not doing that well. But again, with the closed primary system, he really doesn't need to. He just needs to, kind of do well enough and have enough people split the vote because they do first past the post. So we're at 46 concurrent. So I don't think we have enough demand to go for the overtime. But maybe if you guys go on Twitter and just tell people to join, we can do it. And I'll also tweet it out and see if I can help us get to 50. Let's go here, Twitter. Can a few more people join me in the live stream? Now we're gonna, this is like real time, baby. Real time for overtime. Stream now if you want to see me react to Andrew Yang's performance on at Bill Maher's overtime segment. And then I gotta put a link to where is it? View on YouTube. Copy. Paste. You see what I'm doing for us, guys? Keep this train running. Sweet. All right. So I've done it. You see, I've done it. So if you can do it, then we can make it happen. But just so you know, let's see here. I'll show you. Share screen. Where's my StreamYard interface? Window here. So you guys can see right now. Ooh, wow, look at that. That's kind of cool. It's showing us window of a window. We got 47 concurrents right now on YouTube. Daniel, I hope you're, I didn't know you're on True Social, but thank you for sharing. That would be an interesting crowd to get on here. Let's see. So yeah, we're at 44. I don't know that we're going to make it, but I'll tell you what. Oh, now we're at 46. Why don't we do this? We get to 48. We'll just make it happen. We'll round it up. How about that? So we need 2 more people to join us on YouTube. Okay, to be part of the solution, I'm now going to go onto YouTube and post it onto my channel community page in case any of my subscribers didn't join us from the beginning. Control copy and present, share screen here. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to say okay, and I gotta put the link. You know, the irony is the longer we wait, the more people we're gonna lose. But we'll make it happen here. Okay, now paste it. Post it. All right, I've done what I can do. I've shared on YouTube and the Twitter sphere. And we are at 45. I know. I kind of, now I'm like, shit, maybe we should just do it. Let's see. 46. So we're at 46. If we get to 48, we'll make it happen. So while we're waiting, you can see the number here. I don't know if you guys can see it, but in the top left corner, it has the live count. So we're at 46. Rock saying, be patient. Yeah. So while we're doing it, I mean, let's just recap why people thought he did so badly. I mean, I thought he did well. I think the ultimate thing that he needs to get, if Andrew or anyone in the Forward Party is hearing this, like, you guys need to take a position on issues that people care about. I get why you're saying, hey, eat your vegetables and reform democracy, and I'm all for it. But you got to give people some meat. We're at 47. Okay, one more, and we'll do the overtime react. So I think that's the biggest problem that the Forward Party has. And I think they had a convention or something recently. I saw that on Twitter. I think it was in Texas, maybe. Oh, what the hell. You know what? If you 46 are still here and you didn't leave, let's just do the overtime react. I'm not going to be a little precious person with you all. You guys, I mean, 45 is still a good number. So let's roll into it. Now, because we're staying with this, you definitely need to like and share this stream. And if you're not subscribed, hook a brother up. Okay, let's get on with it. Overtime.
CNN, it's me again, and I'm here with the panel we had today. Israeli actress and activist Noah Tishby, co-chair of the Forward Political Party Andrew Yang, and Michigan Congresswoman, soon-to-be Senator, Representative Alyssa Slotkin. Okay. Should there be, the first question, very brief, should there be a primary for vice president?
Primary for vice president? That seems weird. No. That would be my answer.
Oh. And we're going back to the beginning of the republic. When we were at the beginning,
Right.
didn't the vice president wasn't a dude who ran with the guy,
No,
right?
it's
He was
whoever came in second place.
second
became the
place.
vice
Can you
president-
imagine?
Vice president, yeah.
Yeah, we found today.
Yeah.
But I said during the show that I thought.
So for those of you who forgot, the person who came in second place was a orange fella by the name of Donald J. Trump. And if we use the old rules by the founding fathers, which kind of shows, like, you know, some of those rules are a little off for 2023, having Trump as Biden's vice president would create some weird dynamics and maybe even dangerous incentives if you think about what some of the most kind of violent supporters of Trump would be tempted to do.
Thought that there should be a competitive primary in the Democratic Party, which I do. But if Joe were to run again, I think there should be a primary for who his running mate should be, because the fact is that person could wind up stepping into his shoes, and the people should have a say.
Yeah, I think this is one of those cases where you're kind of overfitting for the current situation, which is, I think Yang is saying, hey, I'm not in love with the idea of Biden being, you know, the nominee again. So maybe the best I can do is force a primary for the running mate. But if you make that rule change, I think you'd have to think about the long-term implications. And wouldn't you want a president to be able to pick their own VP, someone that they can work with, versus you know, have this kind of team of you know, competitors kind of thing. Or but yeah, that's so actually in this case, I'm not really. This is probably the one where I would disagree most with Yang. Like, if totally agree with him, open primaries for presidential, ranked choice. Biden should step aside. I'm in that camp. But then saying, oh well, if Biden is the primary selected nominee, then we should have a primary for the VP. I don't know. I don't know if that's the best way forward, but curious what you all think. Let me know in the chat and comments. Open primary for VP.
No,
I have.
you don't care. It's not going to happen.
I care, right, it's not gonna happen, right.
Why waste political capital?
I don't think it should be primary for, because I think that is, as a candidate, that's
Oh, by the way, we are over 50 concurrent viewers, so we did get to the to the target.
your first choice as a possible president, and that shows a lot.
So you're with
Thank
him,
you.
or yeah?
No, I don't think so. It's the first choice of the upcoming president.
Okay.
Okay, I agree with the actress lady. I don't know her name. But yeah, agree with her.
Okay. What does the panel think of the new upgrades to ChatGPT? Oh, you must have many. Now, this is not just ChatGPT is very recent itself, and now they found a way to make something that we all find creepy even creepier. Is there any benefit to this technology getting more advanced?
Well, it can write college essays in about 30 seconds. So if that's too slow for you, then you can just turn it up and then it can get it done in 10 or 15 seconds. In all seriousness, I have friends who run firms and they're saying to me in private, look, I'm going to let go of 40% of my staff because I can now get more done with fewer people. That's happening to a lot of repetitive white-collar jobs. 44% of U.S. jobs are either repetitive manual or repetitive cognitive. And it turns out the repetitive cognitive might be the first to go.
Yeah, but this is also.
So on this one, the whole robots are coming and automation is going to take away all the jobs thing is an interesting one. You know, I agree with Andrew that the trajectory of technology is going to replace a lot of repetitive, maybe not even repetitive, some generative jobs. But I don't think you can kind of stop that. I think like technology will continue to advance, and if there's a way to get things done faster, you know, humankind will come up with and develop those tools. I think the more interesting question is then what happens to the displaced workers? And this is where I think the basic income and maybe, you know, more modern education and kind of make continuous education would be interesting. But yeah, so on this one, on this one, so maybe so far for the overtime one, maybe this is why some people thought that Yang didn't do as good as he could have. I think on this one, he kind of was right that it's coming, but I think he could have said, and therefore, this is why we need to think about how to transition and how to be more kind of adaptable as a society.
At a moment when we cannot get enough people to work in the jobs that we have. So while we may be trending in that direction, we have a massive problem getting our current jobs filled. So I don't feel like we're on the cusp.
You're right, Alyssa. They're both happening at the same time. The fact is the labor force has shrunken by 2.5 million American workers post-COVID. Now they're at home. We're trying to get them back into the workforce. And then simultaneously, this tech's going to come in and wipe out, let's say, as one example, 2 million Americans work in call centers right now, making $17 an hour. Like, how long do you think that'll last?
I don't know. You're the expert. That's why I have a panel.
People know that
I can't answer
job,
these questions.
That job is probably
Right.
automatable today.
I just read the questions.
So I think Yang brings a good point. And it's true. It would have been amazing to say that's why the people working in call centers will need a soft landing, and we need to educate future workers and existing workers who need to find new gigs to take advantage of new opportunities and new types of jobs, or have more leisure time and be able to do more for, you know, community service or take care of families and stuff. Like, basically, he knows that pitch. He had it well in 2020. I suspect he's kind of hamstrung in that he really can't go to the solution that he wants because, again, the forward party hasn't caught up to that specificity yet. But that's just my take.
Was the online criticism of musician Thames' extravagant Oscar dress, which obstructed the view of audience? Oh, I saw that picture. Which obstructed the view of audience members fair. If you didn't see this, yes, somebody had on a big white ruffled thing, and they were all like 5 people behind her were like, the Oscars. What do you think?
I feel like the actress should probably answer
Yeah, I haven't acted in years. Listen, it was a little extreme, but I don't think it calls for an overtime question. There are bigger things in life that we can deal with right now. Thank you.
I thought it was not right.
Are you upset about it?
If somebody sits purposely wears something, they know you're going to be in an audience, and you know there could be people behind you.
I think we don't think about collapsible. Like she should have been able to do it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a weird one. Definitely, you can walk into the facility with your headdress, but then when the show starts, you should probably take it off the same way you would want to take off any kind of hat or, yeah, I don't. That just seems weird that the person would have kept their thing on it, obstructed other people. Common courtesy.
What she wants when she comes on the carpet,
Like
and then
peacock.
collapse that thing down and put it in little thing. That's what she needs
It's
to do.
just like,
Yeah, that was a waste of airtime. I agree with the comment in the chat.
My sense is also the stylist knew that we'll be talking about it. So
Well,
it was
true.
intentional.
We are talking about her
You know,
dress.
yeah, exactly.
again.
You fell into the trap, Bill.
I'm just reading. This is what this game show is. I just read the questions from the people. It's so interesting to know what the people are thinking of.
Give them what they want.
Right, and that is important. Noah,
Yeah.
this is for you. How can people distinguish between legitimate criticism of Israel and anti-Semitism?
Oh.
Good question.
Great question.
There.
Great question. Okay, so anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. First of all, let's get that. Thank you so much. Thank you. And I'll tell you what the difference is. There's nothing wrong with criticizing Israeli government. I just did that on the show. I think that the judiciary overhaul is extreme. So there's nothing wrong with criticizing Israeli government's policies, politicians, that West Bank, whatever it is that you want. If you have something against, if you're trying to dismantle the Jewish state, if you're trying to go against the existence.
Ooh, it'll be interesting to see what Yang and Slotnick say about this, because this is obviously a hot topic. Personally, I am all in favor of countries honoring other countries' borders and right to be sovereign. And I also definitely have major concerns about the Netanyahu leadership. I know he's he and Trump are big fans of each other, but not my cup of tea, the Bibi Netanyahu dude.
Of the state of Israel, that's where the line is drawn. And sadly, there are a lot of people that are criticizing Israel, and that's totally fine. But there are a lot of people that are saying that Israel is not a legitimate country, and that is unacceptable.
Okay.
Yeah, that is true. That is not acceptable. It would make it easier for some people to be more supportive of Israel if the leadership weren't so big on some of their policies that, don't come across super peaceful and respectful of neighbors. But I know I'm touching on the third rail of politics, but it's a Nerds for Humanity show, so we should be able to talk about it.
You agree?
Yeah, I mean, on the other side of the coin, I don't think it's anti-Semitism if you care deeply about the state of the Palestinian affairs. I mean, if you care about people.
Yes, she said it much better.
Well, that's not anti-Semitism.
Of course.
If you care, I mean, and I think that sometimes people go too far and they say any criticism of Israel is anti-Semitism. Every concern about the Palestinians
agree.
is anti-Semitism, and that's also BS.
100%.
Yes, Slotkin. I like the Senate candidate, Slotkin.
Politicians are so political.
Yang is like, bro, I can't even take a position with the Forward Party on UBI and healthcare. I'm not going to step into this one.
Utah Governor Spencer Cox will sign a bill that bans abortion clinics across the state by the end of the year. Is abortion under threat nationwide? Well, duh. I mean,
Yes, I'm going to say big yes.
but this is actually closing. Yeah, I mean, well, and also this week I see there's a federal judge in Texas who is looking to somehow rig it so that you can't get the abortion pill.
Medication, yeah.
Not just in Texas, but
Nationwide.
Nationwide.
It's a
I
federal
don't
court.
even understand how that would work. But the fact that they're trying it is a little scary.
Yeah, I think we should all be very, very clear that the right to have an abortion in the United States is deeply, deeply under threat. They overturned Roe already,
Right.
and already in
I would imagine if Yang weighs in here, this is not going to be a controversial one. I'm pretty sure Yang is pro-choice all the way.
32 states in the country, it's very, very hard, if not impossible, to get an abortion. And the constant onslaught now on medication, so that even in a state like Michigan, where we voted as a state to allow abortion to continue under Roe standards, it's going to potentially threaten our ability for a CVS or a Walgreens or whatever to prescribe the medication that many, many women use safely, prescribed by their doctor. It is deeply disturbing, and everyone should be involved in this if you care about this issue.
What do you say when you talk to?
All right, so Eric made a good point when I was like, hey, why do you think he didn't do a good job? So Eric is saying the problem with Yang's appearance is he didn't defend UBI, correct. Didn't explain the new political party and ranked choice voting, correct. I mean, he's kind of like, what can he say? Like, the party has not developed a platform yet, and they would say there's a process for them doing that. But yeah, I would beat the drum that, guys, if you're in the Forward Party, you gotta start putting some positions out there. Just take a position on freaking healthcare, climate. Let's just start there. Obviously, you know, reproductive rights, like those three, like you could easily take a position on those things. I think. I don't know. Yeah, and then the sour grapes saying that Biden should, you know, allow open primary or a primary for his pick. Yeah, that did come across a bit sour grapes. So I see where you're coming from, Eric. I would agree with you on that assessment, but I think overall I would still give him like a B+, even in spite of that.
People who are, I mean, there's a lot of those. We mentioned it in the editorial that there's something like 25% of Democrats are still pro-life.
My district is pro-life. Yeah.
Your district is pro-life.
Yeah, my district is pro-life, and this is how you know the country has shifted and people are thinking differently, particularly pro-life women. They will pull me aside in an event and say, look, I'm pro-life. I'm deeply Catholic, or this is something I feel in my faith.
Right.
I could never have an abortion. I could never advise my children to have an abortion. But I've never walked in another woman's shoes, and I would never tell her how to live her life. And that is all we are asking for. That is all we are asking for.
The vast majority of Americans actually can find common ground, even outside of their own personal beliefs. It's our dysfunctional political system that is whipsawing us toward one extreme or the other. On this one, it's having terrible consequences around the country for women's reproductive rights.
By the way, in Israel, abortion.
Yes, well done. I think that was a pretty good job of, you know, Andrew can't keep beating the drum on third party and open primaries, so he tries to kind of highlight the broader point about, you know, we're getting whipsawed between these extremes.
Abortion is paid for by the government.
Yeah.
Just saying.
And paid for by the government and a religious state.
And religious as well, because
religious
according
state.
to religion believes in Judaism, life begins in first breath.
Right.
Whether you're into it or not, into religion or not.
Yeah.
But yeah, so in Israel, it's...
I'm into
yeah.
breath. I get that part. What does the panel think of YouTube lifting its ban on Donald Trump?
Oh, no. Yeah.
Strong.
Yeah, I mean,
That was a very authentic response from Andrew.
Tell us what you really think.
No, I mean, he's been allowed back on Meta and Twitter and hasn't taken advantage yet because he's trying to prop up Truth Social, but I think that's going to change. I think he's going to arrive on all of these platforms and we'll all be collectively a little bit dumber for it.
Ooh, now that I could see a lot of the original Yang Gang did migrate from, you know, being kind of Trump, you know, curious, and some are just Trump supporters. It does highlight how Yang was never pro-Trump, and how the Yang Gang had this weird element of like hardcore Trump supporters who were also Yang supporters, even though Yang is very clearly not pro-Trump at all. He's the opposite of Trump, but yeah, that's a good reminder that Yang, not a fan of Trump.
You would ban him? Keep banning him?
Well, no, it's difficult because if you're a social media platform, you're like, wait a minute, he's right now the putative frontrunner of one of the two major parties. So banning him might consist of actually, like taking away someone's political speech. And that's the bind that these companies are in.
Exactly.
Can I just say, though, there's a really interesting Supreme Court case that's being heard right now that's going to be decided on whether social media companies can be held accountable for extreme content that appears on their sites. And it's actually not about whether Donald Trump or anyone else gets on Facebook or gets on anywhere and says these extreme things. It's whether they have designed algorithms to monetize hate, where they know that that stuff is clickbait.
Right.
They know that extreme content gets more views, more likes, more advertising dollars. So they're monetizing the spread of extremism. That is what the Supreme Court case is about. I don't know which way they're going to go, but I think it's a super interesting case for the future of technology. Who is responsible? They shouldn't be making money off of extreme content. They can't control Donald Trump, but they can control how they make their mony.
All right, we'll have to end it there. I don't want to have CNN late on their next commercial.
Oh, it would have been good to see what Andrew said about that. But yeah, I think he probably would talk about how technology is designed to give their people what they want, and sometimes what they want and react to is kind of the primal brain stuff.
Commercial break. Thank you, guys. We'll see you next week.
All right. So we made it through, and we still have 50 people watching right now. So thank you for joining. I do want to do one last thing before I wrap up. Let's look at who are the top Democratic trending candidates. So we did the Republicans. So on the Democratic side, based on recent approval votes on ofthepeople.us, interesting. We've got Katie Porter as a top trending candidate. Like, obviously she hasn't announced she's running for Senate, but just then Marianne Williamson, then AOC, then Michelle Obama, then Nina Turner. Where's Joe Biden? Then Bernie Sanders, then Joe Biden. So this is based on recent votes. And then if you go all time for the Democratic Party, you have the most approved are Marianne Williamson, Pete Buttigieg, then Joe Biden, then Gavin Newsom, then Amy Klobuchar. And I should thank the people who make Of the People possible, which are our Patreon supporters. And I want to give them a shout out because it's an all-volunteer development team. I'm on the product team, and then Ian Schaefer's on the engineering team. But we have a lot of great Patreon supporters who have paid for the hosting fees and the software licensing fees. The people in bold are still actively supporting us on Patreon. And then the people not on bold have supported us in the past, but, had to pause their subscription on Patreon. But I still want to give them a shout out. And this is ordered in terms of the amount of support. So Eric Sanchez, Elizabeth Owen, Tohir, Tony Perella, Rock, Iggy, Aaron Sarnat, Rob, John Perino, Timothy Jordan, Jessica Ganoan, Trickle Up, Travis Klein, Muhan Jong, Austin Bagan, Byram, Mai Zamiris, Christina, Dylan Shell, Gene Thrive, Stephen, Brian, Sujin, Raul, Michael, Noah, Omar, Nathan, Kim, Patrick, Chance, Pat, Damian, A.T., Pamela, Pat, Sheridan. And then our volunteer team is myself, Ian Schaefer, Shay Ellison, Aaron Sarnat, and then some volunteer alums, Don, Sam, Marin, Lucas, Nisa, and Ken. So, and if you want to support Of the People, just go to ofthepeople.us, and then you'll see the About section, and then you can click Join This List, and then it will take you to our Patreon page. And you can see that we are currently generating $84 a month, which helps cover some of our costs, but not all of them. So thank you to all who joined me. Goodbye, nerds, and we'll see you next time. Don't forget, do me a favor, if you can't join as a member, at least subscribe. And if for some reason you can't subscribe, although you really should, at least give me a like for doing a 1 hour, 30-minute react video. See you guys later. Bye, nerds. Oh, I actually have some music. I forgot to play our closeout music. Yes, so thank you all for joining some of the quick takeaways from the show. I think Andrew had like a B+ performance. I think he could have done better navigating this weird space between Yang, the 2020 candidate, and then the Ford Party's current lack of a platform beyond the democracy stuff, which is a great start, but they need to add more. And then we watched the overtime stuff where he probably did the worst, but he didn't do terrible. And then we looked at some of the trending candidates on the Of the People open primary. And we noticed that Nikki Haley's doing really well, as is Pete Buttigieg. And that Joe Biden and Donald Trump are both not doing well when it comes to approval votes, but based on the current system of those primaries, they may not need to. So check out ofthepeople.us. Thanks for supporting everything that I'm doing on Nerds for Humanity, Of the People, and some other volunteer work. And let me know also in the comments, which aquarium do you like better? That's a freshwater live planet tank, and this is a marine reef aquarium. They're probably too small for you to really appreciate them, but that's my side hobby. Bye, nerds.